Welcome to Town Talk, the official podcast of the Town of Stephenville, where community conversations happen. I'm Marilee Joy Castillo, Communications Manager at the town. This podcast takes place in the Chamber of Town Hall, and we share, of course, updates, ideas, information about what's happening in our community. Joining me today, I have the Deputy CAO, Candace Simon, as well as Jeffrey Young, President CEO of the Mi'kmaq Cultural Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you, Marilee.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk today about this beautiful cultural space that is positioned over just off of Minnesota Drive here in Stephenville. And it's a beautiful, beautiful area. I know some people saw 2 wigwams last year and we had an opening ceremony and whatnot. And a lot of people have been kind of wondering why they haven't been seeing them this year yet. So we're going to talk a bit about it. And first of all, I guess first up, we'll find out exactly how the idea for the cultural space came about. If you want to jump on that, Candace.
Yeah, sure. So Marilee, back, I guess, I'm going to say this could be 4 years ago now. I know that the town had been interested in designating a space for Indigenous people to go and be a part of and enjoy. And our then manager of public works, Dwayne Russell, approached a few Indigenous community members, and I happened to be on the other side in a different organization at the time. So Dwayne approached me one day and asked who would be the best person to speak to if he was looking at erecting a couple of wigwams in town, and he wanted to bring some Indigenous kind of spirit into a space. And so the town had come about it in that way. So I was very happy that he approached us with that. And we, from there, got together with a bunch of different organizations and came into a circle and started talking about how we could make that happen.
And who, if you want to give a little shout out there of some of the groups that might have been involved with it right from the start, from the first visioning.
Right. So that would have been the Newfoundland Aboriginal Women's Network, the people of the Dawn Indigenous Friendship Center, and at the time it was the Hollywood Cultural Foundation. We all came together, and I'm not sure, there might have been a couple of other individuals at the time, but it was a nice little group of interested community members who would have some great input into that. So it was very nice that the town had reached out and asking for kind of permission or how do you go about this in the right way. It was really nice to see that happen.
And I know, Jeff, you're involved in a different role this year with the space itself. And how have things been feeling for you since you came on board?
Yeah, things have been great. We've, through partnership with the town, we were able to secure funding to complete the space, to add the additional 2 wigwams to the space, and also, enhance the space in other ways. Thankfully, that funding was received, and we're hoping soon that empty field and parking lot is going to look a lot different with a lot of construction there, but hopefully by September, it's going to be a beautiful space for the community to use.
That's right. And we'll get back to that in a little bit. I just want to go back to talking about the first 2 wigwams that were erected last year. Why don't you tell us a bit about those? Like, where did that inspiration come from? What did they signify?
Right. So again, I have to go back to speaking about Dwayne and his vision. And I know that meant a lot to him as well. He's an Indigenous person. And Dwayne had some artistic talent as well. So he put some vision and some creativity into drafting a design for the first 2 wigwams. And the idea of the 4 wigwams, eventually we would have 4, and that was always the plan. So we thought that having those 4 wigwams represent the 4 directions, the north, the east, south, and the west, of course. And the first 2 wigwams were just picked as, okay, so what 2 directions will we start off with? And so we decided that the children and the women would be the first 2 wigwams that would be represented, and the children coming from the easterly direction and the women from the south. So that was the creative designs that came forward. And so he was a major part of designing those first 2 wigwams. And we launched those last year on National Indigenous Peoples Day and had a celebration, a community gathering, and the community came together to plan that gathering as well.
That's right. And I know as part of that ceremony as well, you got the children involved with the children's wigwam and the handprints. Why don't we talk a bit about that?
Right. So that the children's wigwam was designed around the children, and the whole idea of every child matters in the spirit of truth and reconciliation was selected, and that the wigwam very much demonstrates that commitment to the children. And so as a part of that opening ceremony, we thought that the committee decided that came together. Let's get some handprints that we can actually engage the children and make it meaningful on the day that we unveil those wigwams. And so during the opening and the celebration, we had a group of children come and be able to paste, I guess, that handprint on the wigwam as a sort of signifies, the meaning behind that, and the children do matter, and that that's what we have to remember anytime we look at that wigwam, is it's in the honor of the children, and the children that are here, the children that have been lost, and just carrying that forward.
And it was a very empowering event that took place last June with the unveiling of the first 2 wigwams. Like, anything personal, personal feelings about that ceremony that you want to share with us?
Well, I guess what stands out in my mind is just the idea that, the town of Stephenville had such a place in all of that. The town of Stephenville being, the municipality, and the fact that the town thought that it was a very important thing to honor the Indigenous community and to really play a part in making sure that it happened in the right way. When you come into Stephenville, that we have a large population of Indigenous people here, and, that is not something that you really truly recognize upon entry into town. So it was really nice to now be a part of the town of Stephenville and seeing how community gathering unfolded and how all of the people came together. And that unveiling is a really nice thing to see, and how, council from the town were there, the Indigenous leaders, and, it was just a really nice coming together that stands out in my mind.
And Jeff, I know you have a different role this year, as I mentioned before, and we're going to talk a bit about your involvement this year, but what about for you for that first unveiling last year of the first 2 wigwams?
Yeah, I thought it was a great initiative to add not only an Indigenous space, but Indigenous artwork and representation in the town for tourists, for people coming in, but also for the locals and, the local Indigenous people to be able to, go to a space that's, open to the public, that's welcoming. They can go anytime they want and be able to learn about their culture and their history. And also for tourists coming in, you go to a lot of places throughout Canada, Indigenous communities, and it's very well represented through artwork, through stories throughout their towns. And when I first got with the foundation, that was one thing I always wanted was, these murals on buildings to represent our the Indigenous community, and to let everyone know when they come into Stephenville or in anywhere within, into any of our Indigenous communities, they know they're into an Indigenous community. And I think this project is one big thing that, when a lot of people come into the town, this is one of the first things they're going to see. And when they see this, they're going to know it's an Indigenous community. Community members, Indigenous people, passing this, hopefully will feel a sense of pride that they're in a town, that they don't have to, they're able to speak confidently and showcase their, Indigenous culture and history. When it comes to other parts in the town as well, like we'd like to see it built on, adding more artwork, adding, indigenizing the town. You come into the town and you see asphalt and buildings, nothing more, no artwork. And we have such a diverse population here. But, as Indigenous people, we were the first ones here on the land. And I think that is very important for people to see and understand.
And I know we have big plans for the space this year. So why don't we start moving into that? And as you mentioned a bit earlier, there are 2 more wigwams going to be erected this year. And I know we're aiming for September. Why don't you tell us about those 2 that, of course, we already know that the women and the children have been represented with the first 2. Let's talk about the next 2.
Yeah, so the next two will represent the elders and the men, and the elders being in the north direction and the men being in the west. And so the town of Stephenville has acquired some funding through Arts and L, and that is to go out and look for an artist to design those next two wigwams. And so we did that, and we went out through an expression of interest, and we were fortunate to have selected. We've got some great submissions, but ultimately the committee selected our local Indigenous Mi'kmaq artist Marcus Goss. So he has designed those two wigwams. They're beautiful. They haven't been they're not up on the site yet, but we can't wait for them to go up. And so we also then partnered with the Mi'kmaq Cultural Foundation and Jeff and said, Jeff, we would love for the space. We'd love to be able to enhance it. The town is here as a partner. Do you think there's some funding out there that you might be able to access? And, we want to empower the Indigenous community to take on ownership of this piece of land in this space. The town wants to support it and foster it, but we're looking for some organization to kind of take the reins and work to making this place home for the people who are going to use it.
And Jeff, you certainly ran with that. And I know, as you mentioned a bit earlier, you've secured some funding as well. So why don't we give people a little bit of an insight as to what they can expect, what's going to be happening at the space, and get people kind of excited about what's to come?
Yeah, so we're hoping that some work is going to start within the next week or two. You're going to see electricians on site. You're going to see people doing concrete work, asphalt work. And then once the groundwork is completed, we're going to bring in the wigwams. We're going to bring in information signs, welcome signs, some benches for people to, sit into the space. And yeah, it's going to be, a totally different space once everything is done. But thanks to our funders, the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador, COA, they were able to provide us the funding for the space to be able to complete it. We initially thought that, okay, we'll put a few more things there, but then we're like, you know what, let's go in, let's get this full space done, and so people could use it, and the project's not half done. So thankfully, we will be doing that, and it's going to be a busy site for the next few weeks. As like you said, Marilee, we're hoping to have the site open for September for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
And what's the vision for this space for people to enjoy?
I guess one of the things, especially onto the information signs, you're going to find a lot of information about the history of the area, but also the Indigenous history and the Mi'kmaq people that were here. And you'll find the information about the timelines, the story, the history, how the Mi'kmaq people came here, when we came here, and different events throughout history that brought us to where we are today.
And of course, the space is going to be used throughout, not only during special events and special days, but I guess the hope is that people will be availing of the space as well throughout the summer months or when the weather cooperates.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tourist attraction as well for maybe, they'll park their car, have a picnic, but also at the same time, they're going to learn about the area and about the Indigenous population and, how we came here, that we're still here, we're still thriving. And, and for locals, like I said, there's so many kids in the area. It's, it's an opportunity for them maybe to, they'll go for a walk and learn about their culture and their history. So I think it's going to be well used and by community groups as well to be able to go and use the space for outdoor events and ceremonies.
Exactly. And I'm not sure if we're allowed to or not, but I'm going to throw it out there because I really love the name that has been chosen for the space. So I don't know if you're okay with unveiling what the name is going to be, or would you like to keep that under wraps for now?
Well, I'll give it a shot, I guess. So
Excellent.
It is an exciting kind of, I love the name too. And I guess it hasn't 100% been decided yet, but we've got some strong kind of support towards, this. It sounds like a beautiful name that we'd like to move forward with. It all, like the idea started last summer when the first two wigwams were were being erected, and we were meeting with the communities, the organizations, and the community members who we were planning that event. And, lots of ideas were thrown around the table. And then one particular person, Judy Fall from St. George's, she said, "Why don't we call it Where the People Gather?" And so that kind of stuck, and it kind of stuck with me too. And we never really, we never put that name on it. It never kind of met its home yet. And then until we mulled it over. And then I had a chance to meet up with some Mi'kmaq elders from Nova Scotia a couple weeks ago back at a powwow. And I kind of floated the idea across to them and asked, what would be the Mi'kmaq translation for Where the People Gather? And I'm going to give it a good shot now, but I know that I'm not going to be pronouncing it correctly. But I do think that it's important for us to use the Mi'kmaq names as often as we can. And then, if we have that name in our space and on our storyboards and speaking to the meaning of that, people will get to it's kind of catchy, and people are going to start saying it, and it'll be, even if we're not saying it right, we're trying to say it right. That means something too. So the name Where the People Gather, it feels so inclusive. It's just one of those names that makes everybody feel welcome, and that's what we like about it. So if you say it in Mi'kmaq, it sounds like Majuwinik Igadakin. Majuwinuk Igadakin. So it's going to take me a long time and many times of saying that to say it correctly, I'm sure.
But I think it, like you say, it's catchy, and I think it will catch on. And it's just the significance. It's where the people gather. It's where everybody gathers. It's meant for it to be a space to be shared for everybody.
Absolutely. And it's also important to say and to recognize our French history as well. And with the storyboards that Jeff had mentioned, we're going to, I think there's plans to ensure that both the French and Mi'kmaq and English languages are portrayed in some way when you go and read those storyboards and read about history.
Exactly. And of course, for people who English is their primary language and maybe they don't understand French or they don't understand the Mi'kmaq language, be able to read it themselves, they'll still have the same opportunity to get the actual feeling of what the space is meant for, what the significance of the space is. And I think it's important and it's great, especially with, as you mentioned, the name Where the People Gather. It's phenomenal. And I guess one of the other things is you've had a lot of input and a lot of involvement as well. As you mentioned, local artist Marcus Goss. We've had, of course, Dwayne Russell. And what about some of the elders that have been involved as well?
Yes, absolutely. So when we think about the storyboards themselves and the teachings of the wigwams, the Newfoundland Aboriginal Women's Network had a lot to do with sharing some of the teachings with us last year. Michelle Skinner came and shared those teachings in the space when we opened up. But we'll have to credit Dr. Elder Odell Pike for sharing with us her teachings of the wigwams, but the teachings of what the wigwams represent. So she shared with us her teachings of the directions, and the who represents, the women, the children, the men, and the elders, and what those stories represent, what those teachings represent. Also, the wigwams being in the directions and representing those people, they also represent the seasons. And so she shares her teachings with us, and so you'll see those on the storyboards when you go into that space once they're up and erected. Also, we have to mention Dr. Elder Calvin White from Flat Bay. He also came and shared with us and gave a beautiful opening speech in that space last year. And he shared his pride in having everybody come together and gather. And, he's been in this movement for a lot of years, and he's proud to see how much progress we've made and to see people coming together in that way. So there's been a lot of significant people who've been a part of the growing of the space, and we expect that there'll be more as we move along.
For sure. And with any project, with any event, of course, there are always challenges. Mm-hmm. What are some of the challenges that's been encountered so far with the space? Jeff, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I guess so far we haven't encountered any major challenges, although funding delays with the federal election. It delayed the funding, which, in Newfoundland, we don't have a long construction season, especially when it's an outdoor project. So it delayed. We would have hoped to start the project much sooner, but due to delays in receiving approvals from the funding, we had to wait a bit longer, but it's going to get done. And that challenge is gone now. And we're hoping over the next 8 weeks, not even, there will be no more challenges.
Right.
And everything will roll out smoothly, and
Knock on wood.
and we'll be ready for the unveiling in September.
I know, because I know if at first it was kind of like, well, hopefully things will be ready for July month. But with any event, you've got, delays with suppliers getting materials and the production of everything. Because as you mentioned, it takes a lot to get the wigwams actually completed and to get the suppliers who are going to be coming in and doing the concrete, doing the asphalt, doing whatever.
Yes.
So that certainly slows things down sometimes as well.
Yes, absolutely. All contractors right now, like I said, as we have such a short, construction season, everyone is very busy and there's so many moving parts and different contractors coming in. So right now everything's lining up to work out. So hopefully it stays that way. There's no more roadblocks or anything that's going to get in our way to delay it, but we're hopeful.
The tentative date right now, I believe, is September 27th, I'm thinking, which is a Saturday.
That's right.
And, that day is going to be a very special one. And it's probably going to be last year was very powerful, very moving. And I think this year, with so much being added to the space and to actually see the final design of the space come to light, I think that's going to be a huge celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be a great day of events where you began planning events and putting things together for that day to ensure it's a memorable day and a day that all the community could participate in from all different ages, and there's activities for everyone.
That's right. So it's going to be probably like a full afternoon of events, or who knows, with all the planning and everything, it could go into almost a full day. Mm-hmm. Don't really know it yet, but as you mentioned, could be a full weekend. Who knows, right? But trying to give people an idea of what to kind of keep that day open. Keep September 27th kind of marked off and keep it open on your calendar, because it is definitely going to be a special day here in Stephenville. And I guess one of the other things that we can talk about is the community so far. How's the feedback been from, we did have the 2 wigwams, which were erected last summer. And I know once they were taken out to protect them over the winter months and whatnot, people missed them and noticed they were gone. And people have been asking so far, like, haven't seen them back yet. Are they coming back, or what's happening with the space? So what's your take on how the community has been acting so far and how they've been responding to it?
Yeah, well, I know for a fact I had several people approach me, and I heard other people say that, people's been asking them, why didn't they put the 2 teepees back, this summer? Why, they just, kind of left the space empty. And I guess, someone on the outside, you don't really know what's going on. So that's going to change very soon. They're going to notice when they see construction happening there, they're going to know it's going to be better than it was last year. And, it's happening very soon that, the site is going to be completed. We wished it would have been done for the full summer for people to enjoy, especially tourism and locals. But, it'll be there soon, and it'll be there hopefully for years to come for people to enjoy.
Absolutely. And Candace, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, sure. And Marilee, as Jeff said, I know people have been wishing for it back and wondering. And what I saw the day that we had that initial opening last June, I saw a lot of community pride there. And I saw a place where, kind of politics wasn't a place. And all community leaders came together. And it was sort of, it's refreshing. And I think people like to see that, and I would love to see more of that. Also, it's a responsibility of us as a community, I think, to protect that place and to keep it a space that's safe and free of any negativity or any vandalism or anything like that. So we hope that people and community feel empowered to feel ownership of that space. And so that everybody kind of equally plays a role in making sure that that space stays one that is positive, place where people can go and share time with your family, learn, and just reflect.
That's right. And I know that we've got this coming up and people are hearing this now and they're going to start getting excited about the unveiling of the final space. And how about if there's a community organization out there or a community member who wants to get involved or who would like to participate in some way on that day? How would they go about that?
Yeah, if anybody would want to participate or get involved or even use the space after that it's open for, personal event, a community event, they're more than welcome to go use it. A lot of, organizations in the community partner, so we're all in communication. So I don't say there would be very much overlap, but if they want to reach out to me, or at the Mi'kmaq Cultural Foundation, or I'm sure if they got in contact with somebody at the town, the message would be relayed to, if they want to partner with us, get involved that day, if they want to offer something, or
maybe they got an idea for that day, something
Absolutely.
that they would like to see happen on that day.
Absolutely. That's why we want to make sure all communities involved and everyone's welcome to the space.
Absolutely. And anything you guys want to add before we clue up here today?
Yeah, I would like to give a shout out just to our mayor and council for just having the heart to put something like this, move something like this forward. It's a very progressive thing that, when town councils get involved in truth and reconciliation to this level and actually dedicate a space that, is committed to showing what it really means to kind of foster truth or be part of truth and reconciliation in that movement. It's not just to sit at the council table and talk about a land acknowledgement, but it's actually see that in action. And so I have to commend our mayor and council for doing something like that and being so supportive in the development of this space.
And what about you, Jeff? Anything you'd like to add here today before we clue up?
Yeah, I want to take, as Candace said, mayor and council, for them to approach us to be able to partner on the space to get it completed in the town of Stephenville. It's great. From the standpoint of the Mi'kmaq Cultural Foundation, any organization or municipality or city that would want to reach out to us, to partner on such project, we would be more than willing and open to. But, for the town of Stephenville to want to do that, to include that in their town and be supportive, in the face of truth and reconciliation and, to show, everyone who were the first people here on the land, I think it's commendable, and I very much appreciate their willingness to do so.
That's right. And, this is, as you mentioned, a project within the town of Stephenville, but I'm sure if there are any other communities out there who might want to do something similar or find out more information about how they could do something similar in their area, I'm sure you don't mind if they certainly reach out for some information.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you both very much for coming in here today. I thought it was important to get that out there. People have been asking, people have been wondering, are we going to see the wigwams this year? What's happening? So I thought it was a great opportunity to come in, talk about the space, talk about what's coming with the space, get people excited. And, I know it's going to be September, so we're going to be short on our season for this year. But, it's certainly going to open up things for next year as soon as the weather and I don't want to say winter after winter because I don't want to think about winter right now, but it's going to be great.
It will.
For sure.
Thank you, guys. So this is concluding this episode of Town Talk. Thank you very much to Jeff Young and, of course, Candace Simon for joining us here in the chamber. And we will talk to you again next week.